Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. We've made it up to part 25 of 30 in my 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. And you know, high-performance cultures support high-performance teams. And it's easier to compete when you're attracting great people instead of searching for good people. So today we're still in the competency component of the transformation equation, which I shared with you back in part 6 of this series. In the last several episodes, we've been in this competency section on the competency component. And I've been teaching you different ways of how you literally develop and grow your people, your team, and yourself as you're leading cultural transformation. Just to recap, that first episode, how-to episode, I talked about creating the leadership library with resources, books, videos, audios, that sort of stuff. Then I talked about getting people in on-site for on-site or off-site personal growth and development sessions where someone is speaking live to your team. And then the last episode, I talked to you about facilitating book studies and cascading these different book studies down through your organization. So if you actually go do this, and you're going to have cultural transformation, there is no other way to do it. And let me say, you're going to have to do a whole lot more than I've been teaching you. This is a how-to starter foundational book that's going to help you know how to do it, what to do, especially if you don't have a clue. But what you're going to learn through this process is there's a lot more to do. There's no way you're going to do less and have cultural transformation. That's what I'm trying to say. If you think you can skip some of this stuff I'm teaching you in this book, you skip it all you want, but you ain't going to have cultural transformation like I talk about in this book. Your culture may change, but you're not going to be the, capital The, sought after employer of choice in your industry unless you do the kind of things that I'm talking about doing. There's no doubt you can do a whole lot less than I'm teaching you, and your team can get a little bit better. And it may seem a lot better than it used to be. But that's not what I'm trying to teach you with this book. I'm trying to teach you how to become the sought after employer of choice in your industry. If you want to do that, this book is the roadmap and guide. And the thing is, most likely in your industry and in your area, especially in your area of operations, the likelihood that anyone in your industry is doing this is almost zero, because hardly anyone does this. That's why it's so easy to go separate yourself. It's also so easy why you don't have to do all this to get a little bit better than your competition. But that's not going to stop. Even if you get better than your competition that's in your same industry, you got to remember there's 2 types of competition. And I talked to you about this early on. I think it was in the first episode. 2 types of competition. Those who are trying to steal your customers, which are in your same business, and those who are trying to steal your people who are not in your same business. So even if you get a little bit better than everybody that's trying to steal your customers, the likelihood that there's somebody out there better than you who's trying to steal your people who may not be in your same industry is pretty high. So that's what we're talking about. So today, chapter 25 of 30. The title of this chapter is Focus on Identification. The subtitle is Identify Your Culture Champions. So if you've got the library in place and you're paying attention to it, you can't just stick it out there and not pay attention to it. Again, that's why it's good to have people sign the books or do some type of electronic checkout where you can see and know who's reading these books, who's reading a lot of these books. But anyway, so if you got the library going, that's one way your champions are going to be able to feed themselves. If you've got on-site leadership development happening, your champions are going to be the ones talking to the speakers in between. Your champions are going to be engaged in the process. The champions are going to be the ones who come back and talk to you afterward, talk about how good the content was. Thank you for doing it. We should do more of it. When's the next time we're going to do this? All that kind of stuff. That's another way to identify your culture champions. And then the book studies. If you're participating in book studies, you're going to be able to tell who your culture champion is, who your culture champions are, because of how engaged they are and the feedback you're getting from them. So that's what this chapter is about. Once you're doing the stuff, now you want to identify your champions, because you need to focus on those champions, because they're the tip of the spear. They're going to do more for you than anybody in the organization. And if you don't focus on those folks, a lot of times they're going to be the first ones to leave. The ones who are actually the most valuable to you in cultural transformation, if you don't identify them and focus on them and pour into them extra, they're going to outgrow and outrun the organization, and they're going to be the first to go, leverage their newfound influence and their passion for growth and development, because those people are going to be highly valuable to anybody who values growing and developing people, or people who are growing and developing themselves. They're going to have options. So I'm telling you right here in this chapter, it's why I'm telling you this. It's why it's one of the chapters in the book. Identify your culture champions. And what I say, and I'll talk to it some more in this episode, is you've got to feed the hungry. You've got to feed the hungry. When I come in and I speak, it's my job to wake up those hungry folks. Wake them up, motivate them, inspire them, help them rise to the surface. So hopefully their leaders will identify them and pour into them and develop them even more, and allow them to develop the other people. So let's talk about it. I want to share a quote with you now to open up today's session from Red Auerbach. He was 9-time NBA championship coach of the Boston Celtics. 16 championships overall as a coach, general manager, and front office president. He said this: "When I first started coaching, people told me to put my 5 best players on the court. But I learned early on that this was not the key to success. It wasn't putting the 5 best players on the court that was going to cause us to win. It was putting the 5 players on the court who could work together the best. We won championships because we put people together. They weren't always our best players." That's pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. He said he didn't believe in putting the 5 best players on the team. This is a man who won tons and tons of championships. He didn't believe in putting the 5 best players on the court. He believed in putting the 5 best players that work together the best on the court. And that's what I'm telling you right here as we start this. That's why that's the opening quote for this chapter. Your culture champions, those people who are the hungriest, they are going to also be those who can work together the best to help you transform the culture. They may be a forklift driver. They may be a VP. They may be an accountant. They may be somebody in the warehouse. It does not matter who they are relative to their job. Their job is basically has zero importance in cultural transformation, what they do for the company. I mean, their physical job. A high impact leader, when he's looking for culture champions, he ain't going, or she ain't going to the org chart looking to see who on the org chart is really showing up. Hopefully they're all showing up, but you know what? Most of the time, those are the last ones to show up because they're resting on their position of authority. They've already accomplished a lot, so they ain't as gung-ho and they're not as bought in. And a lot of times they don't like it because now they've been on easy street. Now they got to learn a whole lot of new stuff, and they got to learn to lead instead of manage people. Sometimes, though, those people are the hungriest. But a lot of times they're the most resistant. So what I'm telling you is here as a high-impact leader, when you're looking for your culture champions, Do not worry about what their job is or their title is or their position is or their rank is. None of that stuff matters. Cultural transformation, the way that I'm talking to you, is about character. So let's talk about identifying your culture champions. The sooner you identify and engage your culture champions, the quicker and easy your journey will be. And the reason that is, you're going to have the people identified. They're going to self-identify sometimes. If I come to the room, because I'm going to tell them, if I speak to your team, I'm going to tell them, if you're hungry, if you like this stuff, if you bought into what I'm saying and you read this book and you like it and you want some more of it and you want this organization to adopt this stuff, you got to make sure your top leader knows. Whoever brought me in this room needs to know that you're on board. And the reason they need to know is because of this, because that leader needs to identify them. And sometimes there's a lot of people in an organization, and that leader can't go out and pay attention to what every single person is doing. So he's got to quickly identify culture champions, and then leverage those culture champions to identify other culture champions, and on and on and on. And then you build a team, regardless of position and title. You build a team of people who are going to model and lead the way for cultural transformation. And it doesn't matter what the character is today. They could have terrible character, but if they hear me speak or they get involved in a book study and they get fired up and they start wanting to get better and change themselves, that is a culture champion, because they're becoming a character champion. Sometimes those with the worst character can actually be the strongest role model, because they actually do change. The light bulb does go off and they actually transform themselves. Anyone who can transform themselves, their self, is going to be the most powerful and impactful at helping you transform an organization. So the sooner you do it and the quicker you do it, the easier it's going to be for the top leader to lead this cultural transformation, because you don't have to do it by yourself anymore. And I'm telling you, I can't say it enough, I've seen too many leaders who want to depend on those on the org chart to lead a cultural transformation just because they're in a leadership position. I'm going to just talk straight with you. Sometimes that's the most stupidest, dumbest thing a leader could do, because those people ain't on board, and some of them ain't never going to be on board. Just because they in that position, don't give them any right to lead a cultural transformation. You need to earn it. And I see that happen all the time, because leader who brings me in doesn't know what they don't know. So they start depending on their formal authority leaders to go out and lead this cultural transformation. And now you got people who ain't on board trying to get other people to get on board. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So that was some leadership truth talk to you. I call it leadership truth. It's kind of like a surgeon's scalpel. Might hurt, but it's meant to help. I said it that way because if you're a top level leader and you're about to lead a cultural transformation, what you have to know is the org chart doesn't matter. It should. Everyone on there ought to be a high impact leader. But if you had never done this type of stuff, this type of development, a lot of those people, they struggle to even be a low impact manager. Some of them maybe are a high impact manager. Very few, if any of them, are going to be a high impact leader of people, because it's never been expected of them. They never had to do it. But these people, the hungry people, your culture champions, they're the people who will help you carry the load from day one. So the sooner you find them, the sooner they're going to help you carry the load. And you're going to want to reward them. And you don't have to reward them with money. You can, and maybe you should, but you don't have to. These are the people who will help you cast the vision and keep it top of mind for the entire team, because they are hungry. These are the people who are truly hungry. They'll read and learn much more and much faster than other people, especially if they see and feel you believe it in them. If they see you saying, hey, let me know when you finish that book, come up and meet with me and talk to me. I want to know what you got out of it. and they're going to just dive in. They're going to eat it up. That's how you feed them. You don't have to give them money. You can if you want to. And again, a lot of times you probably should, because they're going to add a lot of value to your organization if you allow them to. And again, I'm going to beat on this dead horse one more time. I've seen a lot of leaders who they don't want to let their cultural champions lead, because a lot of the times who I think is the culture champion, they're not on the org chart. So these leaders who don't know what they don't know, they want to get somebody on the org chart to be leading the transformation. And again, they should be leaders and they should be leading the transformation, but only if they're a culture champion. If they're not a culture champion, I don't care if they're on the org chart. If they're against everything we're trying to do, they ain't going to be here long if I'm leading the company. The higher up the ladder you get, the higher up that org chart you get. If you're on Mack Story's team, you ain't got much time. The higher you go, the less time you got, because you got a lot of influence for good or for bad, and that's exactly what I know. And I would have a talk with my team if I roll this out. I'd say I'm putting a 10 on everybody's head, including yours, Mr. C-level leader and Mr. or Miss VP, Mr. or Miss Director. I'm putting the same 10 on your head that I'm putting on everybody else's head, down to the frontline entry-level worker who started here yesterday. I'm putting a 10 on everybody's head, and there ain't nobody can take it off but you. And you can take it off before you leave the room today. But I can't take it off. You can take it off. And then I'd explain to them this stuff. And then I'd take them through a book study on this book. And I'd start to realize who's on board and who's not on board. Who took the 10 cap off, put on an 8 cap. Who took a 10 cap off, put on a 1 cap. So you may be surprised to discover many of your culture champions will be in entry-level or support roles. These people are frequently hungry for this type of change because of how their leaders make them feel. And leaders, I use the word loosely right there. A lot of times the entry-level support people, they're hungry because of the way their leaders make them feel, but they're really not leaders. I mean, they are low-impact leaders of people, but what they really are managers of people. And a lot of times it's the entry-level support people who really, really know we need to be doing this. A lot of times the leaders at the top, they don't understand what's going on at the bottom, because there's a lot of filters between the bottom and the top. And if that leader's not out there engaging those entry-level frontline people in the workforce, they don't have a clue what's going on. I'm going to go on and tell you. I don't care how many people in the org chart tell them what's going on. If you're a top-level leader and you ain't out in the trenches every now and then talking to people, shaking hands, asking questions, learning from these people, you ain't got a clue what's going on. That's just some straight talk. That's some more leadership truth. I don't care if you got 10,000 people in the company. You need to get out and go to the front lines and learn what's going on. That's leading people. You don't have to go out there to manage people. But right now I'm talking to people who are interested in cultural transformation, to go from managing people to leading people at a very, very high level. And I reference Bob Chapman sometimes. I think they have 13,000 employees, 200 locations around the world. That man gets all over the front lines. He teaches this stuff I'm talking about. That's, as CEO, that's almost his full-time job in the company. And it should be. The top leader should be the leader of the company. That's the one thing the leader can't hire. Now, everybody else below the top leader, they need to be a high-impact leader and high-impact manager. They got work, things, and processes they need to manage, but the top leader actually has the privilege that they can hire all the managers. They can hire everybody in every management role to manage everything that needs to be managed. And again, those people still should be expected to become high-impact leaders of people too. But what I'm trying to say is the top leader can focus on being the top high-impact leader and leading the organization. Their whole focus in a truly high-impact culture, the top leader is focused on the people. Yeah, they get a little bit into the management weeds, but they focus on the people. That's why they have time to go talk to the people. They're not managing a bunch of stuff, which eats up all their time for dealing with people, because they know the most important thing they can do is lead the organization. They ask a lot of questions. They talk to a lot of people. That's because they want to know what's going on. You may be surprised who becomes a culture champion and who doesn't. I've touched on this already a little bit. I just want to hit it one more time. Many of your former leaders who you may expect to become champions may not, ever. They may not even be on your team a year or 2 years from now. If they're high up in the org chart, they may not be on there 6 months from now if you're serious. It depends on how much derailing of your mission they try to do. They're going to smile to your face, but they're going to stab you in the back. That's the way it works. And the reason that happens is because that's the way it's been happening in a lot of organizations that don't do this. That's the culture. That's what you got to get out of there. You can welcome them to come with you. You can welcome them to change. But if they choose not to, and they're very far up the org chart, you're just going to have to miss them. They need to be gone. They're going to be toxic to the culture you're trying to create, and they're going to be like a massive anchor dragging behind your boat. It's going to be hard to move forward with an anchor high up in your org chart. And again, stuff I'm talking about now, it's one reason a lot of leaders can't create the culture I'm talking about. Those leaders don't have the courage to get rid of some really sharp people at the top. They may have tremendous competency, but they got terrible character. But the leader may not understand it till they start having something to measure their character with. When they start talking about unifying principles of personal growth and leadership development and leading people and valuing people, and then they figure out this person doesn't do any of that. I've seen it many, many times in many, many organizations. That's where everything I teach you comes from, is my experience. Those who prefer to continue managing people are going to do great harm the longer they remain. And as you start cascading this type of content out through your organization, everybody's going to be watching. They're going to be watching you, Mr. or Miss Leader. They're going to be learning what leadership looks like, and they're going to start to really understand what it doesn't look like. And they're going to start to see the people who are up in the org chart who are not bought into any of this. They're going to see who the top leader leaves in a position who isn't on board. And what's going to happen is those leaders who allow people who are not on board to continue to stay on board month after month, while the leaders are trying to say, this is who we are and this is who we're becoming, and they got these jokers in there derailing the organization. What's going to happen with the leaders who are allowing it is they're going to lose integrity with their team. All the people who are watching and hoping this is for real, every day that passes with this toxic manager of people continuing to be allowed to do that, those leaders are going to lose integrity with the people. And again, that's something that'll drive away your best people, your culture champions. When they start to see the top leader letting some people off the hook, they know this stuff ain't for real. And the reason they know is because they're a higher level leader than the top formal authority leader. I've seen people on forklifts quickly, even before you even get started, they already know. Their CEO or their business owner, this ain't for real around here. They already know. I said, well, we got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they ain't ever had this stuff. Oh, I know. And most often they're right. And what happens though is those people get on board because they actually value this, and then they jump ship and go work somewhere else. That's why you as a top leader, when you do this, you got to do it for real. You can't like halfway do it. You either do it or you don't do it. But again, I wouldn't start this and start terminating everybody who's a jerk on day one. I would tell everybody, if you're a jerk on day one and you continue to be a jerk, you may not be here next month or 6 months from now, next year, unless you get on board. I would definitely say that. I would declare my intent. My intent is we're serious about this. You're welcome to be serious with us, or you're welcome to jump ship, or we're going to kick you off the ship down the road if you don't participate, because this is who we're becoming. I would definitely have that talk. And I would have it with everybody listening so that everybody knows our leader's serious. See, you can't say that unless you intend to have integrity and actually do that. Because if you say it and don't do it, you're going to lose even more integrity with your team. This is some high impact, high character stuff. It takes a person of high character to do what I'm teaching you in this book. Most people are not going to do it. They're going to play around in it. They're going to pick and choose little things to do and get a little better. But I ain't talking to those people today. I'm talking to the one during this 30-part book study on this book. I'm talking about and talking to those who truly want to do it. And I know there are not many of you out there. The top leader must make it clear their participation in the transformation is not an option. And I'm talking about those people who want to continue managing people. It's not an option. Your participation in this cultural transformation is not an option. You got to have a top leader with integrity to say that up front. And then over time, again, depending on how high up in the org chart this person is, who may not be on board, higher up they are, the less time they got. And then the top leader's got to do the right thing. And I'm going to tell you, when you do the right thing, the rest of the team's going to step up like you've never seen before. That's what always happens. A lot of times the top leaders think, oh, if I get rid of this toxic person, we're going to be in a bind until we can find somebody. A lot of times you're not, because that 40% productivity that I talk about, when people are following someone because they have to, they're basically 40% less productive. When you have a high up leader and you get rid of that toxic person, there's a lot of people who may be holding back that 40% productivity who unleash it. And a lot of times you don't even need to replace the leader. I've seen it. So I'll leave you with a couple of quotes, or actually one quote here from Tom Mullins. He says, a coach will call out the champion in you. They will see your potential. They will speak it over you, and they will demand it from you. That's exactly what I've been trying to do as I've been speaking on today's session. I'm trying to call out the champion in the top leader. I want to see them for their potential, that they actually can transform the culture in their organization. But they got to do it. When it comes to personal growth and leadership development, people want to be led and fed. But they need leaders who are able and willing to lead and feed. And what I'm talking about is feed the hungry. That's your culture champions. Those people want to be led and fed. So you got to grow and develop a team of leaders who are capable of leading and feeding those top performing culture champions. And if they're not on the org chart, I promise you these people are capable of being on the org chart. You just don't know it yet, and they may not know it yet. You're going to be filling your pipeline for succession in the future with these folks. Even if they don't have the competency, you help them grow and develop their character. When you see that they want to grow and develop their character, at some point it's going to lead them to a level where they'll go get any competency they need, because failure to get a competency you need is a character issue. If I need a degree or a certificate or a license that I don't have and I won't pay the price to go get it, that's a character issue. I'm not willing to sacrifice, to give up. And it's an integrity issue. I may be saying I want to do that with my mouth, but my actions are telling the world I don't want to do that. So I'm lying to the world because I really don't want to do it. If I wanted to do it, I'd go do it. So when you develop these folks' character, you discover them as culture champions. They want to grow and develop their character, and you help them do that. They're going to grow. They're going to be eligible to be put on the org chart. They may not want to be, and that's fine, but you're going to have an entirely new set of candidates to fill positions going forward. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen, or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.